The following is a Jester production. And who's your daddy? Alright, so, I have written Article 6, but right now, for YouTube, we're on Article 5. The Convergence, Part 5. The moon closed the portals. Okay. So, this one I didn't believe for a little while. But from the data that I've used, I think the Native Americans or Indians may be right. And some of the other ones that, and some of the other tribes that the moon may have been captured. It's either the moon was captured and there's a back and forth between lights where one we fall and one we go forward and evolution, and this evolution is kind of run by frequency. It's not DNA mutations or environmental. It's definitely frequency. Uh, but I'll get into the article a little bit. It's I'll leave the link in the description. But I'm just gonna go over important things or anything I think I need to explain a little bit. So what I think about, like, the moon, apparently, like, we're coming upon this time for a second light. And there may not be a moon. I don't quite fully understand that, but if we have some kind of frequency shift, then we could go, like, into, like, another dimension. Which is what I think happened with Atlantis, the Garden of Eden, and all that stuff, was we had a frequency downgrade. And I think, I'm not for sure if the years are exactly correct, but I think something like the Hindu cycles probably do exist. And I think they shift back and forth between good and bad, or by your choice as a soul. And there's certain times when this is open. But anyway, okay, so let's get into it. So, the moon definitely makes it kind of like a prison planet, the soul grid. And it's a biological downgrade from crystal blood to red blood. And the crystal blood is where you hardly have to eat anything and you can live up to like 1200 years per se. And you have to just eat like plants every once in a while. Whereas with the red blood, you have to eat meat and you have less lifespan. And the moon brings a restriction to oxygen. But let's get into this. So the moon correlates with the extinction of the giants and the collapse of higher consciousness. The Tower of Babel, all of it traces to one event: the moon's arrival in the Earth's sky, and it wasn't an accident. So, I mean, statistically, and the moon doesn't make sense. The moon is tidally locked. It shows us the same face, always one. And most moons don't do this. It's statistically unusual. The moon is the right size and distance from the Earth to create perfect solar eclipses. The sun is 400 times larger than the moon, and the moon is exactly 400 times 400 times closer to Earth. This produces a rare phenomenon where the moon's apparent size matches the sun's exactly. What are the odds? Astronomically low. The moon's orbit is near circular, not elliptical, like most captured satellites. If gravity alone captured it, we'd expect a more chaotic, elongated orbit. especially for something that large. No planet has ever been found with a moon this large relative to its size. We've discovered thousands of exoplanets. We've cataloged their moons. Nothing like the Earth-Moon system exists anywhere else. And what's even more interesting is in reality, at least when I took astrophysics, the moon and Earth really rotate around each other. It's not the moon orbiting the Earth. We kind of orbit each other in a way. Another oh man, I had something in my mind that I wanted to say that I felt like was important, but I forgot. Anyways, let's just go on. Oh. Okay, so the standard explanation is lucky coincidence but when you triangulate the electric universe model, ancient texts, and the biological timeline, a different picture emerges. The moon was brought here deliberately as a weapon. Why? Why? You wonder, right? So, what the ancient text actually says. Okay, so every culture has flood myths, every single one, but many also have pre-moon myths, stories of a timeline before the moon's existence in the sky. The proselynes of Arcadia claim their ancestors lived in the land before there was a moon in the heavens. Aristotle references calling them pre-lunar people. The Zulu of South Africa have oral traditions describing the moon was brought and the world changed. Sumerian texts describe Tiamat before the celestial reorganization, before the heavens were separated from Earth. The Book of Enoch describes the Watchers, beings who fell and brought forbidden knowledge. But it also describes cosmological changes, the alterations of the heavens, the shortening of the year, and the disruption of natural cycles. And then there's Chani, the entity speaking through the Chani project in the, well, I put early 2000s, my bad. Well, no, I mean, it was cut in, like, 1999, I think. That was an error on my part. I need to edit that out and change it to, like, the 1990s. Said something that stopped me cold when I read it. But everything began to slowly change when we defeated those that brought the moon. It's not a metaphor, it's a direct statement, but the moon was brought by someone, and defeating them allowed this slow restoration to begin. So the moon has to be a frequency disruptor. And the electric universe makes that clear. The moon, let's see here. Earth has a natural electromagnetic field, the magnetic sphere, the magnosphere. It also resonates a base frequency called the Schumann resonance, 7.83 Hertz, which matches human alpha brainwave states. So this isn't a coincidence. Human biology evolved in sync with Earth's natural EM field. But when the moon arrived, it didn't just create tides in the ocean. It disrupted Earth's entire electromagnetic environment. Okay, and you gotta think that if something was coming this way, I mean, think something that big coming this way, that would probably freak a lot of people out. maybe that's what Globeke Tepe is actually showing in its picture. It's showing the moon's arrival. Okay, so think about if you didn't have a moon, and then a moon was being brought here. Like, what changes would you see? And you also got to think that the changes would happen in increments, because it would have a first effect that the it would start having weird effects the closer it gets. Probably the first one, the most hardest, which would be the Younger Dryas, and then you move down a little bit, and there's another kind of like flood event around like 5,000. Well, there's actually kind of like four major ones, and they're probably about 3,600 years apart. But the main cycles are the 7,200 years apart. And then when you multiply 7,200 times 7,200 and get the 1440, that's when the whole thing began. Okay, so let's go. So how did the disruption work? Tidal walking creates asymmetric EM influence, electromagnetic influence. The moon's gravity doesn't just pull on water, it pulls on Earth's molten core, creating friction, heat, and electromagnetic interference patterns. Because the moon is tidally locked, the interference is constant and directional, not evenly distributed. The moon reflects solar wind asymmetrically. Earth sits in the sun's magnetic field, the heliosphere. The moon periodically blocks this connection, creating EM shadow zones and disrupting the steady flow of charged particles that structure Earth's magnosphere. Orbital resonance creates beat frequencies. Just like two sound waves at slightly different frequencies create a pulsing beat, the moon's orbital period and the Earth's rotation create electromagnetic interference patterns, new frequencies that didn't exist before. And these aren't life-supporting frequencies, and they're disruptive. So, now we're talking about closing the portals. Now that you kind of understand that. So the ancient sites had pyramids, stone circles, and temples on ley lines were built on certain locations, okay, where the Earth's natural EM field creates resonance points. Okay, so they were functional. In a high EM environment before the moon, these sites acted as portals, not necessarily to other dimensions in some mystical sense, but to other frequency bands of reality. Think of it like a radio. Okay, right now, you're tuned into one station. Consensus, reality, material, world, red blood, biology. But there are other stations broadcasting. You just can't perceive them because your receiver, your body and consciousness, isn't tuned to those frequencies. And that's what the moon disrupted. So before the moon arrived, Earth's EM environment was stable and high amplitude. Human biology was tuned to higher frequencies, crystal blood, not red. Portals amplified natural resonance points. Consciousness could shift between frequency bands, access other realms, communicate with non-physical intelligence was probably normal. But after the moon arrived, Earth's EM field became chaotic and disruptive. Human biology downgraded to survive in a lower frequency environment, the red blood. Portal sites stopped functioning, no stable resonance to amplify, and consciousness locked into a narrow material band, can't perceive the other frequencies. Contact with higher intelligence severed. So the portals didn't really disappear. We lost the ability to perceive them and use them unless you probably meditate or do other things. Um, but so the moon's arrival correlates with a biological downgrade. Um, your body is an electromagnetic system. Your your brain generates measurable EM fields. Your heart's magnetic field extends several feet outside your body. You are quite literally an antenna. Before the moon arrived, that antenna was tuned differently. Crystal blood versus the red blood. So with the crystal blood, you live longer. You don't have to eat meat. You have there's some kind of second light source that replaces the moon. It's not necessarily the moon, and this is what has me thinking that there's some kind of like frequency shift coming to where the moon might disappear and we might see that second light again. If you have love in your heart, I guess it's a gateway opening up. And Channing also said that this is possible after because they defeated those that brought the moon. They're on the different frequency. Okay, and now, well, I think I'm going to get into that. But here's a connection. Red blood is iron-based. Current humans, optimized for low EM environment, requires meat for complete nutrition. Lower frequency, reception, material, focused consciousness. Survives a moon disruptive field. Crystal blood structured differently. In other words, light and frequency changes our blood to initiate certain things, but but it's optimized for high E environment. Can synthesize nutrition from light plus plants with a second light source. Higher frequency reception, expanded consciousness, requires a stable EM field to function. The moon's arrival didn't just close portals externally, it forced a biological adaptation that locked us out of the other frequencies we used to access naturally. So here's the timeline of the destruction. So the moon's arrival, probably about 12,900 BC. Younger Dryas begins. Yeah, because that leaves about the 2,000 years before the huge frequency shift. So, according to the documents and the natives and stuff like that, it seems like reptilians are the beings that brought this. So it begins to immediately disrupt the EM fields. Okay. The pyramids start amplifying the wrong frequency. Defenders probably quickly shut down the pyramids to remove capstones and damage to prevent catastrophic amplifications. Maybe they didn't do that in time too. A partial quick destruction, some megafauna die, the environment destabilizes, but the shutdown prevents total collapse. Okay? Okay, so... And then... In 12,900 is also when the Miyake event happened. And that also has to do with things. But I think I get into that more with the next article and the article following. But anyway, so let's talk about the slow, you know what? Yeah, the slow degradation. So the pyramids offline, but moon's frequency compound slowly over millennia. Giants survive but are declining because when the moon came, we had more oxygen before 12,900. Okay? But the giants survive but are declining because oxygen and dropping gradually from 30% to 25%, somewhere around there. Crystal blood humans slowly adapt to red blood, generational transition. Megafauna populations shrink, higher consciousness access is fading, portal sites are losing function, and this is the world before the flood described in ancient texts. Now, the final collapse would be Noah, right here, okay? Around 2400-ish, okay? And, okay, so, around this time was when Noah's flood. That was the final collapse. And either the pyramids are forcibly reactivated, war between fractions, or moon frequency reaches the critical threshold after 10,000 years. Catastrophic environmental changes, atmospheric oxygen drops rapidly, giants can't breathe, bodies too large for new O2 levels. Final extinction of the giants, the Nephilim. We know that some of them survive, but that the lesser oxygen that they could actually intake might be why they went from the heroes of renown to people that were trying to eat us or kill us and stuff like that. The remaining megafauna are mostly extinct. Crystal blood biology is no longer viable. Red blood only survivors. Knowledge of pyramid technology is deliberately hidden. Survivors terrified of reactivation. So post 2400, the prison locks. The red blood humans rebuild in a degraded environment. Higher consciousness is inaccessible. Portal sites are non-functional. The moon's frequency becomes normal. We're born into the prison. This is the world we live in now. And the Tower of Babel probably wasn't necessarily about language. You know, we spoke one language, gods came down to confuse it. Standard interpretation, pride, punishment, linguistic diversity. Electric universe interpretation, the Tower of Babel wasn't a physical building trying to reach the sky. It was the moment the moon's EM disruption fully locked in. One language, unified consciousness, okay? Tower to the heavens, portal technology, trying to restore higher frequencies. Confusion of tongues, frequency fragmentation, scattered across the earth, a loss of telepathic EM communication. The Tower of Babel was kind of like possibly the last portal system that was created to go to the higher frequency. And that's why it was destroyed, basically. So, why the giants couldn't breathe? Okay. So, there's a lot of texts from Norse to Genesis to Enoch to Greek Titans and that talk about giants. Standard archaeology says there's no evidence, but we know differently. Giants were biologically adapted to a high oxygen, high EM environment. Larger bodies required exponentially more oxygen, okay? The square cube law, a 12-foot human needs vastly more O2 per breath than a 6-foot human. I think we can understand that. So the atmospheric oxygen before 12,900 was around 30 to 35% versus the current 21%, okay? A high EM field supported larger biology, giants, megafauna, Mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant sloths thrived. Moon arrives. Slow O2 decline over 10,000 years. Giants stressed but survive. Populations shrinking, lifespans shortening. Breathing becomes harder, like living at a higher altitude. Some adapt, most don't. And then the final collapse, the Noah's flood event, drops the oxygen level from 25% to 21% in a short time. Giants literally suffocate, bodies too large for the new atmospheric composition, mass extinction. Now, still, some did survive, probably the smaller giants. But most of them either died off, or if they're here, we have no idea where they are. They're hiding pretty good. Or maybe not. But, yeah. So, by bringing the moon, they basically reversed what the pyramids did, and the pyramids became weapons. So the pyramids were built as EM amplifiers designed to enhance Earth's natural resonance, support higher consciousness, and maintain portal function. But pyramids don't discriminate. They amplify whatever dominant frequency is present. So before the moon, beneficial, amplified Earth's life-supporting frequencies, enhanced consciousness, supported crystal blood biology, maintained portal access after the moon, amplified moon's destructive frequency, accelerated environmental collapse, killed the very civilization that built them. And this is why they were shut down, the capstones removed, internals damaged. Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried not to hide knowledge, but to prevent reactivation, okay? Or maybe the story. I'm starting to think that this may have the knowledge about when the moon came and it disrupted everything. Because if we turn them back on right now, the moon's frequency is still dominant, and it would basically repeat the catastrophe. So right now is not the time to turn on the pyramids. But in the other timeline where Channies are, where future humans or a parallel timeline won the war they fought, they defeated the reptilian AI controllers who brought the moon, okay? And after that victory, things slowly changed. The second light became accessible again, the environment stabilized, crystal blood technology became viable, plant-based nutrition is sufficient, no meat needed, higher consciousness restored, portal access reopened. But it was slow. Even after defeating the moon's controllers, biological adaptation took generations, and that's even according to Channing. But so what does this mean for the 2025, 2035 window? So we're approaching this window. The war to defeat the moon controllers. If we win, then we will slowly go back into merge into the higher timeline. Okay? If we lose, then I'm pretty sure a lot of us, about 90% of all populations, will die off, because there'll be some kind of cataclysm. So, and this is what I think took place, and why I guess Brian came back, or maybe it wasn't Brian. Maybe could have been some kind of like high energy angelic being now. I don't know who came back. All I know is that somebody came back, and somebody knew the future. But the documents that he gave me were part of an equation that I had to figure out, to where I had to use the documents that Brian gave me, the Channy documents, the Sumerian king list, and Bledsoe on the Y files. I used his information too, and I ran all the data, and this is what came out. And, whew, it's a lot of stuff to take in. But, so the main thing is you need to pay attention to your body, okay? Get more sunlight. Continue to eat meat, okay? When the second light isn't there yet, but even when the second light does come, I don't think the current generation is going to be affected by it. I think it'll be our kids and our grandchildren that'll be more affected by it, and they'll be the ones living the 1200 years and stuff like that. So right now you still need to eat meat because we're not at crystal blood yet. We need the second light for that. But I'm going to get more into detail about that in the next article. And the next article is already written, if you want to read it. Your body is a light receiver, how sunlight, cholesterol, and consciousness connect, and why the moon's disruption didn't just close external portals, it shut down your internal receiver. So the moon isn't just in the sky, it's in your blood, and breaking free means understanding how the prison actually goes. Now, I also want to go back to the 3600 year period thing. So it starts from the Miyake event about, well, that's actually about 14,400 years ago, or 14,400 years ago. And then roughly about 3,600 years after that event, you get that Younger Dryas happening. And then another 3,600 years go by, and you get the disappearance of, like, Doggerland. And then another 3,600 years go by, and you get another cataclysm around that time. Now, some of these cataclysms may not be world catastrophic. Some of them may be regional or local. Maybe where the frequency has the most energy. But you have a Black Sea event, and then 3,600 years after that, you have another Black Sea event. So I find all that interesting, and I'm finding the information a little bit overwhelming, but I'm digesting it, and it's making sense. And maybe it's the moon that spits you back out to be reincarnated. That's also something that the ancient texts talk about. That's maybe why you have to be light as a feather to get past the moon, because if not, the moon's gravitational pull pulls you back down to the earth. So, but yeah, here it is. And so this is, Article 6. Sunday, I'll be writing Article 7. In Article 7, I'm actually going to talk about the pyramid grid and what the pyramids did. But next Wednesday, I'll be going over the Convergence Part 6, your body is a light receiver. This Saturday, I'll be going over more of the lactoferrin stuff. Hopefully, I'll be closing that up. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. And the following has been a gesture production. I will see you Saturday. Alright, y'all have a good one. Bye.